Well, good evening. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Portland's Informational Ballot Measure Program. My name is Debbie Kay, and I have the honor of being the Portland League's president. The League is dedicated to making democracy work. We believe that democracy works best when we are informed about issues and engaged in our communities. The League presents these programs to give our Multnomah County community members an opportunity to learn about issues that affect our lives and our well-being. So thank you again for participating. I want to acknowledge that we are on the occupied sacred lands and waters of the indigenous Chinookan people and other native peoples as well, and that we aspire to be as good and effective stewards of the land and waters as they. Tonight, we have 6 leading agency officials from Metro, the City of Portland, and Portland Public Schools, and they will discuss their respective ballot measures. Let me remind you that our election is on November 5th. Ballots must be received by 8 o'clock that night, and if you're going to mail it, get it mailed about a week in advance or use a drop-off site in that intervening week. We thank the Multnomah Bar Foundation and the Carol and Velma Sailing Foundation for funding the League's voter service work. And we thank Multnomah County for letting us use their boardroom. This program is also sponsored by our League's Education Fund. Metro East Community Media, our wonderful media partner, will broadcast tonight's ballot measure discussion on its cable channels. The rebroadcast schedule is on the table by the door. YouTube video recordings of each measure discussion in tonight's program will be available soon and posted on the League's website at lwvpdx.org and at our outstanding voter resource center, vote411.org. I am pleased to report that the League of Women Voters of Portland recently released our city government study update titled The City That Works, Preparing Portland for the Future. You can find it on our website, and we hope you will join us right here on November 12th at 7 o'clock to hear about our study results. The back page of your program has information on this important and timely program. The League of Women Voters is a membership organization. If you like this program and the many other programs and services that we offer, then please consider joining us. It is an exciting time. There's a lot to do. We would value your participation and your support. We thank our speakers, our moderator, and League volunteers for their time and expertise in bringing these programs to you. And when you vote, if you have registered your ballot with the county, you get one of these by email. I voted. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, a longtime League member and past president of the League of Women Voters of Portland, my esteemed colleague, Carol Cushman.
Okay, next is the City of Portland's ballot measure 26205. Once again, our speakers are from the city's Water Bureau, Mike Sturr, Director Administrator, and Gabe Salmer, Deputy Director. Measure 26205 amends the city charter to authorize city participation in emergency mutual aid agreements. The question: shall the charter be amended to authorize emergency mutual aid agreements between the city and other government entities, tribes, or utilities? You will have 8 minutes to discuss this measure. Mike and Gabe?
Thank you and good evening. I'm Mike Sturr, Director of the Water Bureau. Emergency response is something that's dear to my heart. I've been doing emergency response for probably 30 years around the country and in other places in the world. I can't think of anything hardly that's more important other than water quality. Most of you know that we experienced a citizen's lawsuit, and out of that settlement agreement came a bit of uncertainty in our ability to engage in mutual aid agreements. And what we're trying to do with Measure 26-205 is to clarify our position regarding mutual aid agreements. And I think before I get into that, I think it's important to understand a little bit of history. In 1996, Congress passed and the states signed something called an EMAC, Emergency Management Assistance Compact. That is how one state supports another. One public entity in any state can support another public entity in any state, and it's done through an agreement called an EMAC agreement. That's a very large-scale mutual aid agreement, and it is the method that was used for us to go support the city of New Orleans post-Katrina, something I think that the Bureau and the city can be very proud of. Instead of writing memos, we went and did something and helped a community that was in deep need. Katrina was a disaster in many ways. I think that all the agencies involved in the response to Katrina learned something, and there have been hundreds of thousands of man-hours put in around the country to try and make the system work better than it did in Katrina. In 2003, the Department of Homeland Security and Presidential Directive Number 5, a very important directive in the emergency response world, laid out something called the National Incident Management System, which is how we all operate in any disaster. And one of the things in the National Incident Management System is encouragement. It's very hard to mandate that people do anything, but it's encouragement for all entities in the country to consider mutual aid agreements. And frankly, that's just a logical response to best use of resources, is what that is. And those guidelines were continued in the Incident Management System guide that also encourages the formation of mutual aid agreements. That's 2003. Let me step forward to 2005, when Katrina occurred. The city, I think, did a fantastic job of going to help a community in need, and we learned a lot from it. And when we, excuse me, when we came back from Katrina, myself and 6 other cities in the state got together and decided to form a statewide mutual aid agreement for water and wastewater utilities. That's water utilities supporting water utilities. It's called ORWARN, Oregon Water Wastewater Response Network. The effort to do that, it's not just something that we dreamed up, but it's a nationwide effort. There are WARN agreements in all 50 states and in foreign countries now. So we got together, the 6 entities, and formed the Water Wastewater Response Network in the state. It's an agreement that communities have signed. There are now over 300 members around the state that belong to this mutual aid pact, and it has procedures for deployment, reimbursement, and so on. I think that's really important, and what we're trying to do in Measure 26-205 is clarify our ability to do that for water utilities to support each other in disaster response. 2 recent ones that we have done, we helped the city of Salem during their algae bloom event, and we also went across the mountain and helped the Warm Springs tribe with their water efforts, and we were reimbursed for our support in those efforts. And in that case, the city is just trying its best to clarify our ability to be a responsible water provider in the state. We are expected to help other people, and they're expected to help us. If you plan on holding your hand up and saying, "Come help me in a disaster," you should be willing to provide help yourself. And that's the fundamental philosophy behind mutual aid agreements. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mike. First question. Portland is already in an Oregon-wide mutual aid group. Someone knew before we started this presentation tonight, because they turned this question in a little bit early. Why do we need an out-of-state mutual aid agreement?
I would just comment to think about what the subduction zone earthquake would do. One of the things about New Orleans that people tend to forget about is it wasn't just New Orleans. It was 700 miles of coastline that looked the same. And if we have a subduction zone earthquake, it's basically from one end of Oregon to the other and probably up to Seattle. We are the biggest thing in the state, and we need big help. And we would probably be seeking people from outside, like we went to Katrina. My likely targets might be people that I work with in California who have big utilities and can afford to roll staff to help us. So we definitely need to be able to do that, and we definitely need to both practice it. I can't tell you the benefit of actually having gone on not an exercise, a real response. And I think it's essential that we do.
Thank you. Do we need to do this with environmental? I assume they mean the Bureau of Environmental Services as well, to cover our other sewer system.
So the Bureau of Environmental Services is actually part of this network. It's Oregon Wastewater Response Network. And the Bureau of Environmental Services participates with us in that compact.
Okay. Next question. Why is it better to spend water fund money rather than general fund money to send Water Bureau staff to help another entity with a disaster?
I think I got to refer that. It's a little close to advocacy.
Okay. I will accept that. Please explain how this measure covers. Okay, let me restate this, as I just got lost in the middle of the sentence. Please explain how this measure covers the issues raised by the federal government regarding Bull Run. And I'm assuming they are referring to issues raised that brought us the filtration plant, our state, rather than federal. So I am assuming they are talking about the federal protections of how you work together with them.
I'm not sure that the question has anything to do with Measure 26205. Maybe it was related to one of the other measures.
Okay. We may have, it was labeled 205, but we may have gotten it, should have been on the previous one. Why agree to help more disaster-prone areas when Portland isn't as at risk as other areas? How much will this actually cost us?
In terms of risk, I would tell you that earthquakes are a certainty. It's not if, it's when. And we best be prepared to deal with it. And it's not only the subduction zone earthquake. We're probably sitting on a magnitude 6 capable fault called the Portland Hills Fault. Let's hope it doesn't break tonight.
No.
At least let us get finished.
This person, I think they're referring back, you made reference to the Anderson lawsuit. Would you explain that court decision that prompted this?
I would just say it's a settlement agreement, and I'm not an attorney, so I will defer that to.
Okay, that ends the questions that we have. Thank you to both Gabe and Mike for your comments and your presentations tonight.